Hi, sweet ones. This is Grandma Kitty. Tonight, I want to tell you about Betty Bowman, a woman with a warm smile and a bright spirit. But sometimes, even the kindest heart can be betrayed in the most heartbreaking way. And before we begin, would you do something for me? Go ahead and subscribe so you'll never miss a story. And while you're here, tell me, what country are you watching from? Let's see where all of Grandma's neighbors are listening tonight. Betty Jo Bowman was born on December 13th, 1990, in Wichita, Kansas, to Nancy and David Sponsel. From her earliest days, Betty shone with a warmth that drew people to her. At Bishop Carroll Catholic High School, she was known for her bright smile and genuine kindness. Those same gentle qualities followed her through her life. Betty chose pharmacy because she wanted to help people. She threw herself into her studies at the University of Kansas School of Pharmacy and earned her doctorate in 2017. Jason Harold, who would later train Betty at Mayo Clinic, said, "She was so sharp and very reliable and hardworking and smart. We hit a home run with that one." She was also a really nice person. Eric Muller, a colleague who worked beside Betty, remembered how her positivity was contagious. She brought an upbeat spirit to every room, and her kind heart was always ready to help. Betty was not only devoted to her job, she loved life. She loved to travel, taking trips to Yosemite, Hawaii, and Iceland. She was a fierce supporter of LGBTQ+ rights. She adored her corgi, Sir Crumpet II of Malbury. Her friend David Berger remembered their last talk. Just a week before she left, she had told him about a double rainbow she saw on her walk with Crumpet. She told them she hoped everyone would find a bit of beauty in their day. That was just who she was. The person who should have treasured Betty most was the one who would destroy her. Connor Fitzgerald Bowman came into Betty's life while she was building her career. Connor was a medical student, 2 years into what would become an internal medicine residency at Mayo Clinic. He was clever, driven, and had special knowledge that would become deadly. Connor worked as a poison control specialist and knew a great deal about toxic substances. They married on May 30th, 2021 at the Rhapsody in Independence, Missouri. To friends and family, they looked like the perfect medical power couple. Both were climbing their careers at one of the world's most respected medical centers. They moved to Rochester, Minnesota, where Connor finished his residency, and Betty found her place working in the operating room pharmacy. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Connor had large medical school debts. That meant they kept separate bank accounts. By August 2023, friends would later say the marriage was falling apart quickly. They spoke of divorce, of cheating, and of growing money problems. No one knew that Connor had already begun planning a very different solution to his marriage trouble. On August 5th, 2023, while Betty was at work saving lives, Connor was at home searching the internet about how to take someone's life. His search history would later show the cold, careful plan of someone trying to design the perfect crime. Connor typed, "In browsing history, can it be used in court?" And then, police track package. He was building the groundwork for what investigators would later call one of the most premeditated murders in recent Minnesota history. Connor's medical training gave him an unfair advantage. As a poison control specialist, he knew exactly how many ways substances affect the human body. He knew which poisons are hard to detect, which symptoms look like other illnesses, and most importantly, how much would kill without being obvious right away. On August 10th, Connor made his first try. He prepared a smoothie for Betty. That surprised her because Connor never made food for people, friends said. Betty took one sip and immediately said it tasted bad. She even had a friend taste it before they threw it away, joking that maybe Connor was trying to poison her. To those who knew Connor, that joke felt wrong. Connor was not the joking type. That same day, his computer searches showed his true aim. He was converting 120 pounds to kilograms, Betty's approximate weight. Weight is important when figuring lethal poison doses. Connor was literally figuring out how much poison would end a life. On August 11th, Connor found what he wanted. He looked into liquid colchicine, a drug used to treat gout that can be deadly in high doses. To most doctors who do not specialize in poison control, it would look like serious food poisoning until it was too late. Connor made a purchase for $52.20 using his Mayo Clinic employee email address. He was ordering his wife's death sentence through his work email, a fact that later helped prosecutors show how planned and cold this was. But Connor's planning went beyond buying poison. He was preparing for life as a widower. On August 18th, 2 days before Betty would die, Connor searched for, is widower gender neutral? He was already thinking of how to describe himself to the women he planned to meet. In fact, Connor created a profile on a dating app and described himself as a widower. He was already messaging women and making plans for a life that required Betty to be gone. Connor acted as if Betty was already dead. The digital evidence would later show he had researched everything from all of wintergreen toxicity to how to erase browsing history. He studied sodium nitrate as another poison option and calculated the exact colchicine dose to be lethal. Connor was not simply planning a murder. He was designing what he believed would be a perfect crime, using his medical knowledge to stay ahead of investigators. What he had not planned for was a digital trail he would leave, a trail that would lead police straight to him. But first, Connor needed to carry out his plan. For that, he needed Betty to trust him one more time. August 15, 2023 was meant to be just another ordinary Tuesday evening for Betty Bowman. She had already lined up plans to meet her friends later that night, eager to relax after another long, exhausting day working inside the operating room pharmacy. Betty's job was demanding, but she took pride in it, and time with friends was her way of keeping balance in life. What she could not see, however, was that her husband Connor had something entirely different planned. While she thought her evening would be filled with laughter and company, the man she lived with had quietly prepared a far darker reality. Only a few days earlier, Connor had prepared a smoothie for Betty that tasted strange. She had felt unwell after drinking it, enough that she remembered it days later. That moment might have been a warning sign, but she did not press it. Now, on this Tuesday evening, Connor surprised her again. Instead of a smoothie, he brought alcohol to the table, pouring rum for Betty and whiskey for himself. This seemed unusual to anyone who knew them well, since friends would later confirm Connor almost never made drinks, let alone surprise Betty with them. Yet, in less than a single week, this was the second time he had prepared something for her to consume. Betty, hopeful that their marriage might be healing, saw it as a rare chance for intimacy. She even texted her friends to cancel their plans, telling them she would be staying home instead. To her, this looked like Connor finally trying to make things better between them. But what Betty could not imagine was that Connor's gesture was nothing close to an act of love. The alcohol in her glass carried colchicine, a poison both tasteless and odorless, once mixed in liquid. Each sip she took was delivering a carefully measured dose into her body. Betty believed she was enjoying a quiet, romantic night with her husband. Connor, sitting across from her, knew exactly what those drinks would do. At 2 o'clock in the early hours of August 16th, Betty woke violently ill. She began vomiting, dehydrating, and experiencing unbearable pain. Connor, playing the role of the concerned partner, guided her to the bathroom and offered comfort. He told her he was worried, standing close as though he was a supportive husband. But inside he knew what was happening because he had caused it himself. By the following morning, Betty was still weak and sick. She sent messages to her friends, writing that she had been very ill since 2 a.m. She believed it might have been caused by the odd smoothie she had consumed 5 days earlier. That strange drink was still in her memory, But she did not know that the real danger had been in the alcohol she drank just hours before. Connor drove Betty to Mayo Clinic's St. Mary's Hospital, where she was admitted under what doctors thought was a case of severe food poisoning. They treated her dehydration and attempted to stabilize her. Connor remained at her side, calm and steady. The medical staff assumed this composure was a sign of his professional training, since Connor was a doctor in residency. They did not see that while Betty was being cared for, Connor was quietly using his position to access her private records, following her test results and progress closely in secret. He even tried to guide the doctor's thinking, suggesting that she might be suffering from a rare immune condition known as HLH. The test results for that condition were inconclusive, but the suggestion helped keep attention away from the truth. As hours passed, Betty's health continued to decline. What began as what looked like food poisoning soon spread into far more devastating effects. Her organs were shutting down, her lungs were filling with fluid. Cardiac problems developed. Surgeons rushed her into an emergency operation where parts of her colon had to be removed because the tissue was dying from the poison inside her. Through all of this, Connor stayed near, showing the mask of an attentive husband. But Connor's double life was clear. Even while Betty fought for her life in the hospital, Connor was messaging women on dating apps. He described himself as a widower, though Betty was not yet gone, and he bragged to women about the $500,000 he expected to collect from her life insurance. On August 20th, 2023, Betty's battle came to an end. She was just 32 years old. The moment she died, Connor acted with speed. He pushed to have her cremated right away, insisting that Betty did not want to be cut open for any autopsy. He told people she hated the thought of being turned into a cadaver. To those on the outside, his words seemed like a grieving husband honoring his wife's wishes. But to the medical examiner, it was the first glimpse that something about Connor's urgency felt wrong. The very next day, August 21st, the medical examiner's office received a phone call that changed everything. An anonymous voice explained that the Bowmans had been planning divorce. The caller mentioned infidelity, fights, and deep cracks in the marriage that outsiders had not known about. The information was too serious to ignore. Dr. Elizabeth Weiss, the examiner, immediately blocked the cremation order and preserved Betty's body for a full autopsy. At that same time, Captain Casey Mullen, a veteran detective with more than 20 years of experience, took the lead on the case. He had investigated countless suspicious deaths, but Connor's strange calmness and his actions after Betty's death raised alarms. Detective Alex Kendrick, an expert in digital evidence, joined the investigation. Together, they began to pull at the threads that would soon unravel everything. The first major break came from the University of Kansas, where Connor had previously worked. University officials alerted police that Connor had made unusual searches on his work devices. He had looked up colchicine, sodium nitrate, and even detailed instructions on how to clear browser history. Warrants were issued, and investigators collected his electronics. From 15 different devices, they uncovered 9 terabytes of data, more digital information than most entire murder cases ever produce. It became an undeniable timeline of Connor's planning. His searches showed him studying the lethal properties of poisons, calculating doses based on Betty's body weight, and preparing his crime with chilling precision. And in the middle of this planning, Connor had been using dating apps. Investigators discovered his messages and profiles, showing him living as though Betty was already gone. At this point, the picture of Connor's double life was no longer speculation, it was recorded proof. By October of that year, investigators had a solid case. They found a bank slip that showed a deposit of $450,000, Betty's life insurance payout. He had spoken about that money with strangers even before Betty had died. Dr. Weiss's autopsy confirmed the truth. Betty had died from organ failure caused by colchicine poisoning. She had never been prescribed colchicine, She had no medical need for it in her body. On October 20th, 2023, Connor Bowman was arrested during a traffic stop. He was charged with second-degree murder, and his bail was set at $5 million. On the same day, Betty's death was officially ruled homicide. Connor showed little grief. He was cold, calculating, and quick to request a lawyer. For Betty's family, the arrest brought both relief and heartbreak. Her sister Brianna wrote publicly, "Betty, we miss you. Poison was not the way you were supposed to go. You were so perfect, patient, and understanding to him." Her mother, Nancy, left Kansas for Minnesota to begin the painful process of attending every hearing, determined to see justice done. And sweet ones, think carefully about what this means. Betty believed she was safe in her own home, beside the very person who promised to protect her. But that was where her danger lived. It is chilling, and it makes you ask yourself, how well do you really know the people closest to you? And if stories like this strike fear in your heart the way they should, then do not just sit here quietly. Subscribe now, so these lessons and warnings come straight to you. If you choose not to, then at least go into the comments and tell us why. Because ignoring the hard truths is almost like pretending tragedies like this will never reach your world, and you and I both know they can. The case against Connor only grew stronger. Every device, every search, every bank record tied him to his plan. Prosecutors upgraded the charge to first-degree premeditated murder in January 2024, meaning Connor would likely spend life in prison without parole if convicted. His lawyers tried 3 defenses: not guilty, alternate suspect, and even suicide. But legal experts agreed those defenses were desperate at best. Nancy Sponsel continued traveling back and forth from Kansas, each trip a heavy burden, but one she carried for her daughter. She made sure Betty's beloved corgi, Crumpet, was cared for by people who truly loved her. She worked with prosecutors, determined to bring the truth into the open, and here is the truth we cannot avoid. Betty was a bright light, a skilled pharmacist, and a kind soul. But her own home became her place of danger.